Hey, Ellen Langer did a research study with old men and put them into a room and had them pretend that they were 20 years younger by simulating an external experience for 5 days where they were reflected back the era of 20 years earlier. So Nat King Cole was playing in the background. They were given experiences of pictures of times that they themselves, their cohort, has experienced 20 years earlier. So they took them out of their everyday environment where these people were basically reflected constantly that they were getting old and they were aging, and put them in for 5 days into an environment where they were basically afforded the opportunity to act as if they were 20 years younger. And by the end of this research experiment, their levels strengthened, their height increased, their abilities increased, their optimism increased. So it wasn't just this experiment where they felt good at the end. Their physiology literally changed. So by the end of it, people who were walking with walkers weren't even using walkers. And it was because they were given an opportunity to have a different reflection from the outside. So that made their minds, that gave them the opportunity to trick their mind into being a different kind of technology on the inside. So one of my students asked me today how that experiment is reflectory of the mental health issues in America today. And she's a Black woman, and she says, it's a lot of mental health, especially bipolar, is linked to racism in her experience. And then a guy came up to me, he's one of my older students, and he said that he was just diagnosed with PTSD, which, FYI, all of us has PTSD to a certain degree. He was diagnosed with depression, and he is in my class right now, actually, to be in school to do something in industrial technology, I believe. And because he is now diagnosed with these things, he is afforded the opportunity to get disability. And he looked at me and he said, well, that means I'm going to school literally for nothing if I can get disability. So here's this double-edged sword of the system that we live in, okay? Here's this man who's diagnosed. He doesn't even know that he has the technology within him to transform his diagnosis. And his only option, his easiest option, is to accept disability and say, it'd be easier to do that than to work. It'd be easier to feel this way, to lack taking responsibility for my insides. It'd be easier to just say, I am somebody who's depressed, I am somebody who has PTSD, I am somebody who's now on disability. So all of those things, my schooling and whatnot doesn't matter. So my answer to this woman, who is a Black woman, and she's wondering about mental health in America and how that study plays into just mental health in general. We are the only culture that has multiple personalities, which is at current considered dissociative identity disorder. Just sit with that for a minute. We're the only culture that has DID, okay? We are also one of the only cultures, and I shouldn't say one of the only cultures, but many cultures revere schizophrenia as a godsend. They believe that it's an actual spiritual gift. So in our culture, if you're schizophrenic, you're considered completely insane. So the context that I want to frame this in is that mental health in America today exists because we believe that our external circumstances are more powerful than us. And it makes sense to believe that. It makes sense for my student to say, I'm a Black woman, and what I see is in my culture, there's so much basically disassociation, and there's so much bipolar issues going on, and a lot of that could stem from this idea that they are being marginalized because of their race, which makes sense, right? So our external stimulation comes on the inside and reflects to us. And when we believe that external stimulation, when we say, okay, this person's judging me for my race, and that must mean I'm diminished in some way, then we create different chemicals in our bodies that turn on or turn off genetic coding that is in alignment with that belief. So if you come from a lineage of oppressed people, which many Black people do, and also many white people do, and many women of definitely, other cultures do. So a lot of us come from lineages where the belief system was in a lack matrix, where the belief system was, I am being victimized, and in order for me to stand in my power, I'm going to have to fight, or the thing that makes the most sense is to just lay down and die, right? So the thing that I want to really hit home on is that when we accept the reality that the greatest technology on the planet is literally within us, so evolutionarily, our brain supposedly hasn't evolved in 200,000 years, okay? But over the last few decades, when the Industrial Revolution and all of these things occurred, we are learning now to not evolve mentally, or I'm sorry, not evolve physically, but evolve mentally. And what we're doing is actually manipulating our external circumstances. So the difference between the seer behind the eyes of somebody back in the day was that the seer probably understood that the only life that they lived was right inside of here. But what happens in American culture is we're constantly put in situations where we are reflected that a life outside of us is existing, and that life is projected onto us and is either more powerful than us, or is stifling us in some way, or is a circumstance that we have to overcome. So our external experiences become believable to us. And if we are somebody who's diagnosed with PTSD, we go, okay, well, I have PTSD. And this becomes then an excuse. And I'm here to say, as somebody, and please read my book if you haven't, but it's not comfortable for me to say this. It's funny, I get to hide behind my words. But when I was 18, I was a newly clean junkie. I had, my total headspace was absolutely in the gutter. I was diagnosed with vulvar cancer. I had to get the whole outside of my vagina burned off. I was diagnosed after that. When I had my vagina burned off, I was diagnosed with herpes and HPV at the same time. The pain was astronomical, okay? So it was absolutely there. And later on in my life, through many experiences that I've had, and specifically I know when the shift happened where I became the different person, where I was able to turn off genes that were turned on based on my mentality. It was in a sweat lodge, but it took me a lot of momentum to get to that space in the sweat lodge where I knew I came out and I said, no longer do these viruses live in my body. I went to my oncologist and he told me it was a waste of my time and my money to get the test because we know these viruses never go away. When they're in the body, they stay in the body. And you, of course, will never be able to understand my surprise, like a giddy school kid jumping up and down sobbing when I got my test results back, that everything was negative. I had to call. I got a little paper in the mail that said, like, you're all good. And I had to call and I was like, are you sure these are the right results? And the chick was like, yes, these are the right results. So this isn't just about physical healing. This is about evolving as a culture. This is about just really utilizing the technology of understanding that our insides are greater. We are greater than any pains we've experienced. We are greater than any oppressions we experienced. And because our past was our past, we have the opportunity now to utilize the greatest technology that we have, which is ourself, to turn off those epigenetic switches that made our cultures, that made our lineages feel oppressed, feel lack. We have the opportunity to transform the future of our lineage right now by making the choice to do so. So when we change our minds, we change our bodies. Our bodies are our unconscious mind. So every single experience that you've had in your life is stored in your body. Every time you walk, your leg is having an experience that your mind isn't having, but your experiences are still stored in the cells of your body. And these are when repressed memories come up during catharsis, when you're all of a sudden something triggers a memory and it like kind of bubbles up from some unconscious part of your body. Some cell is saying, okay, you're ready to receive this information now, so you can integrate it into a different way. So what my point is that it's easy to have an excuse, right, in American culture because we don't trust our intuition, we don't trust ourselves. We're taught that our external circumstances are more powerful than we are, and we have to kind of like overcome the man, or we have something to overcome, or we have to get the degree to feel successful, or we have to be healthy in order to feel healthy. We have to get the love of our life in order to feel loving. And this is simply not true. It's literally a matter of using our insides and recognizing that we are more powerful than what came before us. So when my student, and I deeply understand his crossroads, can look at me and say, well, I'm diagnosed with this stuff, and this is true because that's his experience and that's his past. But now he's going, well, I can live into this in the future by accepting my disability and saying that this is me, this is my identity. Or I could take this class, which he's taking my class, and totally change it. So the thought literally didn't even occur to him. He's like, I'm going to school for nothing now that I am taking his disability. The thought didn't occur to him not to take disability. The thought didn't occur to him that he has more answers than his doctors do for him, that he has the opportunity now to have a different future than his past was. Just because he's an older student doesn't mean that he cannot create a new future. So what the point is that when we say, okay, this person is being racist toward me, or this person doesn't like me, so I'm internalizing that, and that's confusing to me. If we can trust our intuition, if we can feel out our own space on the inside, instead of saying, okay, well, your projections and your your identity about my identity matters to me because somehow I'm wrapped up in what you think of me and you define me somehow. When we look at the world as that the world defines us instead of we define us, that right there is where mental illness basically bubbles up from the surface. Or to the surface, when we go, okay, I'm not trusting my intuition, I'm following somebody else's path of success, I'm following things that I don't even agree with, I'm doing things that I don't even like because this is what my external circumstances says I have to do in order to be valued. That right there, that out of alignment with our actual nature, the nature that's just flowy. When we have a circadian rhythm and we all wake up usually at times that are so off of alignment with our circadian rhythm. We are animals. When we don't listen to our feelings, when we don't listen to the language of our insides, when we let the head be in charge of everything else and we don't integrate the trinity of our feelings, our matter, and our thoughts, we become fragmented. We become disassociated and we don't see a way to actually integrate all of those fragmentations. So the external world that's telling you that you're bipolar, that you have an excuse to feel miserable, okay? Because we've all got them. You'll find a million excuses to feel miserable. The external environment that's saying that you can't and you believe it, that external environment is not more powerful than you, okay? You have it beyond your mind, your body is beyond an intelligence greater than any computer system out there, okay? The greatest technology for change, for transformation, is in you. And it doesn't just change you, it changes your children, it changes your culture. When you can turn off those epigenetic switches and vibrate at a new frequency of a new health, a new kind of wealth, a new feeling that's not something that's just a habitual, repetitive feeling, you are in a position to create mastery over your life, you're in a position to create health, and you're in a position to create change. And I'm just here to say that although I honor all of the things that led up to this point that gave you a diagnosis, that gave you a reason to be miserable, that said, well, this correlation means that I have a reason to do this and a reason to feel this. Yes, you have reasons to feel a whole bunch of ways. And you also have reasons to feel amazing. And when you are in a state of consciousness that is more aligned with bliss consciousness, health and healing happens. When you are in that space, cultural healing happens, okay? So most people are just throwing around pain bodies and letting other people's pain bodies project onto them that they are also in pain and that they're also insignificant, that they also don't have the capabilities of changing. And I'm here to say that you can change, okay? I'm here to say that your health is literally waiting for you. It wants you. Your health wants you more than you want it. And I'm not just talking about physical health. I'm talking about across the board, health across the board. Mental, emotional, physical health. Don't give yourself an excuse to feel like you have an excuse to feel like shit, okay? Just don't, because we've all got them, and they exist for real. They're in your blood. They're in your DNA. And the best and fastest way to change that is to change your mind about it, is to know that you are greater than any traumas you've ever faced. You're greater than anyone else's projections about who you are, and you get to define yourself. And when you do that, you define a whole new universe. And when we all do that collectively, we define a whole new world. And it's our responsibility knowing we are in the 1%, okay? If you're watching this, you know that you have a technology in you that is greater than, and other people don't know this information. And it's literally up to us to be it so we can show them by example, okay? So you have the information to know that you can be the greatest technology that you have. So be it, okay? Sorry this was very long. I love you. Bye.